The wind that crossed the western prairie that evening had teeth in it, not sharp, but old and tired like a whisper that had wandered too far from home. It pulled at the brittle grass, coaxing it into soft sighs, and scattered red dust into the sky until the horizon blurred into amber smoke. Under that wide, sighing sky, a man stood alone by a leaning fence post, hammering a strand of wire into place. Each strike was slow, steady. He wasn't fixing the fence to keep anything out. Not really. Just something to do when the hours between sunrise and sundown grew too wide to carry. His name was Wade Mercer. Folks in town spoke it like a ghost story, not out of fear, but reverence, like saying his name too loud might wake something sacred or broken. 56, give or take? Strong-shouldered, sun-worn, and leather-skinned like every real man who stayed long enough in the West to forget how to smile. His horse, Birch, stood nearby, tail twitching at flies, the only soul Wade talked to since the day the laughter left the ranch. The old oak tree up on the hill knew his secrets too, roots tangled deep in the same soil where his wife lay sleeping 10 winters now. He hadn't placed a marker. Just a braided bit of rope, half buried at the trunk's base, the same rope she once tied her hair with when she danced barefoot through wheat at sunset. The sun was dying low, casting gold across the rust-colored plains when the sound first came. Not coyotes, not wind, something heavier. Something out of place. Wade paused. Hammer in hand, head tilted toward the east trail. His breath held in his chest like a leaf trembling before it fell, wheels, wooden, straining, hooves, slow and dragging. And then a voice, faint, female, not calling out, just pleading softly into the wind. He left the fence as it was and mounted Birch, riding out with quiet purpose. He didn't rush. In these parts, urgency was for the foolish and the young. The prairie had its own clock. Half a mile down, just beyond the juniper bend, he saw the wagon. Its back wheel was shattered, sunk half into mud. A tarp flapped against the frame like it too was trying to escape. Dust hung like a tired veil around the figures crouched near the axle, 3 women, each shaped differently by hardship. The first he noticed was tall and dark-haired, standing with one boot on a rock, her arms folded and mouth set like stone. She didn't flinch as he rode up, just watched him the way wolves watch fire, curious, cautious, unwilling to show fear. Behind her, another woman, younger, perhaps mid-20s, clung to a toddler nestled into her shoulder. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but worry. The kind that had settled in long before today. The last woman knelt beside the broken wheel, her hands covered in dust and axle grease. She was the only one who looked up first, not to meet his gaze, but to judge the sky above him, as if trying to decide if he was going to bring rain or something worse. Wade dismounted, didn't speak right away. He knew how words could startle people when silence had already settled in. The tall one spoke first. We ain't beggin', just broke. The wheel's gone to hell, and we've got young'uns that need shelter till morning. He glanced at the child, cheeks red, thumb in mouth, too tired to cry. No man with you? Wade asked, his voice rough. With dust and years. The kneeling woman laughed without humor. If we had one worth following, we wouldn't be out here with half a wheel and no supper. Wade nodded once, not pity, just understanding. My barn's dry. Bit of hay. Wind won't cut through too much. You can take it for the night, he said, voice low. The one with the child stepped forward, clutching the little one tighter. Fire, please? She asked gently, as if she'd already been told no too many times in life. Wade didn't answer right away. He looked at the sky. The clouds were moving fast now, bruised and heavy. Rain wasn't a maybe. It was coming with a growl. He turned and gestured with 2 fingers. This way. The barn wasn't much. A sloped roof patched with tin, hay scattered and soft. The fireplace inside was a relic from when he used to host neighbors during harvest, back when people came by. Back when he didn't mind, he stoked the fire to life as thunder rolled low behind the hills. The glow lit their faces one by one. Names came after silence. Naomi, the leader, tough voice, sharp eyes, dry wit, wore her coat like armor. She watched everything, trusted nothing. Maybelle. Sweet as a fading hymn, spoke little, eyes always checking her child's breath before her own. Eleanor distant, edges like shattered glass. Wade felt the heat in her stare more than the fire. She didn't sit. She stood with arms crossed until her legs finally gave in. The children, 3 total, nestled together on a wool blanket. No one asked questions. The silence between grown folks was thick but necessary. Outside, the rain came, heavy, certain, inside. They passed around a kettle of thin stew Naomi made with salt, old onions, and dry beans. Wade didn't eat, just watched. The way a man watches something he doesn't want to lose again. Later that night, as the fire burned low and the wind dragged shadows along the rafters, Wade stood by the barn door, listening to the quiet he used to crave, now changed, not empty, not full, just different. He looked toward the hill where the oak tree waited. He didn't walk there tonight. Instead, he stayed by the fire, and outside, under the weight of the storm, the prairie held its breath, as if it too was waiting for whatever tomorrow might dare to bring. ****. The storm didn't pass, not that night, not the next day, either. It lingered. Gray skies swelled with wet breath. The air hung heavy with the smell of earth and timber. Rain pattered against the tin roof in rhythms soft as heartbeats, then harsh. Like hoofbeats, one night became 2. 2 became 3. The prairie, once cracked and wind-carved, softened. So did the silence. Inside the barn, something quiet and human began to stir. Naomi, boots muddy and sleeves rolled high, fixed the broken barn door like she'd been doing it her whole life. She didn't ask. Just grabbed the hammer Wade had left near the fence post and went to work. Her hands knew wood. Her shoulders didn't flinch at splinters. She didn't smile. But her eyes met Wade's once, just once, and it was the first time they didn't hold a dare. Just recognition. Maybelle sat near the hearth with the children, humming a song that was neither joyful nor sad, just steady, like the kind of song a mother sings because silence feels too sharp. Her voice, thin and high, carried gently through the rafters, smoothing the barn's edges like sun on old stone. The boy in her lap, curly-headed and curious, giggled when she tickled his ribs. That laugh. Wade hadn't heard that sound in his home since before the sickness took Emily. It hit him like a soft ache in the ribs. Not pain, something older. Like remembering warmth from a fire long burned out. Eleanor, meanwhile, kept her distance. She took to the axe like it owed her a fight. Out behind the cabin, she split logs in a rhythm Wade couldn't ignore. Crack. 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 Each swing carved her anger into something useful. She didn't wait to be thanked. Didn't want it, but Wade noticed she stacked the wood precisely, neatly, just the way Emily used to dot every now and then. She'd look at him from across the yard, eyes hard, skeptical, wounded, and he'd nod back. Nothing more. That was their unspoken arrangement. For now, by the 5th day, the storm slowed. A little light broke through the cloud veil. It was still wet, but the prairie breathed easier. That afternoon, Wade was filling a trough when he saw someone sneaking up the southern fence, a flash of gingham, muddy boots. A figure too small and fidgety to be dangerous. It was Jed, a scrappy teenager from town, known more for questions than answers. He had a grin like a coyote pup and a mason. Jar of strawberry jam clutched tight in both hands. "Trade ya," Jed said, hopping over the fence with clumsy eagerness. "Trade?" Wade asked. "Jam for eggs." "Mama says y'all's hens lay better than the preacher's prayers," Wade smirked. That was as close to a compliment as he'd get. He handed over 6 eggs. Jed sat on a barrel, spooned jam into his mouth like it was gold. Then, curious as ever, the boy glanced toward the cabin. "They say you've gone half mad out here," he said casually. "That you talk to trees and don't take visitors 'cause you buried your heart with your wife." Wade's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, but they also say those women, they ain't right either. Wade's gaze lifted, sharp. Jed kept going. "One's a runaway preacher's wife. Another got left for some banker's daughter. That little one, her man died after being framed. Shot down like a dog over some missing silver." Silence. "Sounds to me," Jed said, licking jam from his thumb, like all y'all just been dealt the wrong hand. Maybe that means y'all belong here together. Wade stared at the boy, not in anger, but with the quiet surprise of a man who just heard truth spoken by a child. Get home, he said. Jed grinned. Yes, sir. That evening the cabin felt warmer. Not just from the hearth. Something else. Wade sat in the corner, whittling a bit of cedar. Naomi poured coffee. Maybelle rocked her boy near the fire. Eleanor remained outside, splitting. Kindling long past when it was needed. Wade watched them, not as burdens, not even as guests. He watched them like a man watches wildflowers growing where he thought only dust remained. He still didn't speak much. But he listened. Later that night, with the children asleep and the fire glowing low, he stepped outside. The rain had stopped. Completely. The world smelled of sage and wet earth. He walked quietly past the barn, toward the porch, and stopped. Eleanor sat there, alone, her back to him. Her shoulders hunched, arms hugging herself, breath hitching so softly that if the night had any wind left, it would have drowned the sound out. She didn't sob. She didn't wail. She wept the way strong women do, in silence, carefully, as if even her grief had been punished before. Wade didn't say a word. He shrugged off his coat. Old, leather-worn, smells like horses and pine, and gently draped. It over her shoulders. For a second she froze, then slowly she pulled it tighter around her. Didn't thank him? Didn't need to. He turned and walked away, back into the cabin, leaving the door open behind him. She followed minutes later. Quiet, changed, not fixed, not softened. But seen. By the end of the week, the prairie had dried. The clouds broke. The hens clucked louder. The children ran barefoot, and Wade Mercer, the man once buried in dust and silence, found that he no longer minded the sound of footsteps echoing in his home, even when they weren't his. The prairie bloomed in colors no one had planted. Just wild blossoms, soft yellows, purples, and that pale orange that looks like the inside of an apricot, rising stubborn from rain-fed earth. The storm had passed, but something more had shifted. Wade didn't say it out loud, but he felt it in his bones. The land wasn't just full of sound again. It was full of meaning. That morning, Naomi's youngest, Cal, climbed the wooden fence near the corral with the wonder of a boy who didn't yet believe in danger. Wade stood beside his horse, Birch, feeding him dried apple slices. Is he mean? Cal asked, pointing to Birch. He's quieter than me, Wade replied. Naomi watched from the porch, arms crossed, cautious. Wade saw her jaw tighten when Cal reached out. So Wade stepped between them, knelt to the boy's height, and placed the apple in Cal's small hand. Hold it flat. Wade whispered. The horse's lips brushed Cal's palm, soft and curious. Cal squealed, laughed, stepped back, then looked up at Wade with wide eyes. I'm gonna call you Mr. Quiet, Wade chuckled. Guess I've been called worse. By the time Naomi came over, Cal was on the saddle, both Wade's hands on his small back. The boy waved. The sun caught in his hair like gold wheat. Naomi didn't speak, but something behind her eyes relaxed. She'd let someone else lead her child. That was no small trust. Eleanor surprised Wade next. She stood in front of the old chicken, coop with a hammer tucked behind one ear and a spool of twine in hand. These hens are still laying, but that roof won't last another rain, she said. Figured I'd patch it, if you don't mind. He didn't. In fact, something in him was quietly proud. Later she mentioned almost casually, if I sold. Eggs, maybe dried herbs? Do you think the town would buy? Wade looked at her, then down at the coop. I think they'd be fools not to. That night, he left a stack of old baskets and mason jars beside her tools. Said nothing about it. Just left them under the window. In the morning, they were gone, and the co-op had a new roof. 2 days later, Naomi challenged him. He'd just come back from the well, shirt damp with sweat, when she tossed him a fencing sword. Not a real one. 2 broom handles, stripped clean, tips padded with rags. What's this? Wade asked. Lesson in humility, she smirked. You ever duel with a woman? No. Good, then you're not too scarred yet. They danced like 2 ghosts circling something holy. Dust rose around their boots. She struck first, shoulder tap, then thigh. Wade held his ground, calm, precise. But Naomi was fire, fast, laughed when she landed the final tap on his chest. She dropped the stick and threw her head back. The sound that left her was real laughter. It didn't echo. It stayed, lingered, wrapped around the porch beams like a hymn. Wade caught his breath, smiled, and tipped an imaginary hat. "Don't tell the boy I lost," he muttered. Naomi grinned. "He already thinks you walk on clouds. You'll be fine." Mabel was the softest of them, but she carried the heaviest grief, Wade had come to learn. One afternoon she invited herself into the kitchen. He was baking cornbread or trying to, with stiff hands and memory more than skill. "Add lard before you stir. Less dry," she said. Then rolled up her sleeves. For the next hour, they worked side by side. Flour, eggs, silence. Only after the bread was in the oven did she speak. "My husband used to sing while he cooked," she said. "Off-key, loud," said it scared away the burn. Wade looked at her. "How'd you lose him?" "Duel," she whispered. "Wrongly accused." "Wouldn't run?" Said it'd make him guilty. So he stood his ground and died for a crime he didn't commit. Wade didn't answer. Just watched the fire flicker behind the oven glass. She wiped her hands on her apron. "I keep thinking I'll forget the sound of his voice. But grief's funny, it leaves echoes." He nodded slowly. "It doesn't leave, just settles somewhere quiet, follows your steps. Part of the walk." She met his gaze then deeply, warmly, and nodded. The timer rang. The bread didn't burn. That night, something darker stirred. Wade heard the shouting before he saw the man, stumbling through the front gate, drunk, red-faced, shouting Naomi's name like it belonged to him. "Naomi!" "I wrote you. You can't just disappear." Naomi stepped outside, lips tight. Cal clutched her leg. "Get off this land," she said. "You think you're too good for me now? Running off with some mute rancher?" Wade stepped forward slowly, calmly. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't shout. He just stood, unmovable, between the man and the porch. His hand rested near the rifle on the wall, but he didn't touch it. "I said leave." Wade murmured. The man, wobbling, spat toward the dirt, cursed, and finally turned. Walked out under the gaze of 3 women who were no longer afraid. Later, Naomi found Wade near the corral, checking the latch. "You didn't fight him," she said. "No reason to." "Most men would have." Most men," she smiled, tired but true. "That's the first time a man's defended me without trying to own me." He looked up. "You ain't anyone's to own." She touched his arm. "Just a second. Just enough." The next morning, the cabin looked different. Not newer, not cleaner, but love. The windows sparkled. The floor had been scrubbed. Wade's wife's old books were stacked neatly, dusted. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon. He looked around, confused. Naomi walked in with fresh wildflowers in her hands. Mabel was baking again. Eleanor sat in the corner, peeling apples, her sleeves rolled high. They hadn't asked. They hadn't needed permission. They hadn't changed the house. They'd simply added themselves to it. That evening, with the fire crackling, Eleanor sat closest to him. The light made her face softer, less carved. More human. She spoke first. "You let us stay the night," she said, voice quiet. "And somehow we stayed through a season." Wade looked at the fire for a long while, then almost too soft to catch. He replied, "I didn't want to go back to the silence after you left." "No one said anything else?" "There was no need." They came on a Wednesday. 4 men in town coats, all hollow with importance and brimmed hats too stiff for weather. They rode up to Wade's gate like they didn't know it was sacred, carrying dust on their boots and a letter in their pocket. One of them, tall, smug, preacher's nephew, spoke for the rest. "The council's reached a decision," he said, voice tight. "This ... situation with them women, it ain't decent." Wade stood on his porch, arms folded, the sun behind him painting shadows across his face. "They're not wives," the man added. "Not to you, not to no one. They don't belong here." "It sends a message." Wade didn't answer. Another man stepped forward. "Saloon owner's been complaining. The church, too. Town don't want confusion." Don't want sin sittin' on their border. Still, Wade said nothing. He just looked at them. Not with anger. Not even with disdain, just a long, patient stare. Like a tree watching men try to argue with the wind. That night the wind rose again, but not with rain. It came with the smell of smoke. Wade was still awake, sitting in the kitchen sharpening a blade that no longer needed sharpening. The air shifted, sharp, acrid, then a scream, then glass shattering, then firelight through the barn. Window, too bright to be lanterns. The barn. He bolted from the house barefoot, yelling. The children were already awake, crying. Flames licked the hayloft. Horses screamed inside the stalls. Get the children! He barked. Eleanor grabbed Maybelle, who was cradling her boy. The others scrambled outside. Naomi, always last, was behind the stalls, trying to free the last horse. Stubborn and panicked, a beam groaned overhead, then fell. The world shrank to red. Smoke choked the sky. Naomi's scream was lost under the roar. Wade didn't hesitate. He charged through the burning door. Heat scorched his face. Wood cracked under his boots. He found her, trapped beneath the heavy beam, arms bloodied, coughing. Her eyes met his. She didn't speak, didn't beg. But something in her gaze said, not yet. He dropped to his knees, hands bracing the beam. His muscles burned. The barn groaned. Like an old god dying, and then, in that fire, he heard her, his wife, Emily, not in voice. Not in sound, but in memory. You'll love again when you stop guarding the grave. And start planting the seeds. He didn't know if it was real. Didn't care. He lifted. The beam moved. Naomi slid free. They stumbled out together, him dragging, her holding tight. He collapsed on the ground just outside the barn, chest heaving, body giving in. Naomi bent beside him, tears in her eyes. She cradled his head, cupping his soot-streaked cheek. You're not a ghost anymore, she whispered. The fire took the barn, took the roof, took the oldest of the fence posts. But it didn't take Wade, and it didn't take the women. Word traveled fast, faster than the flames. By morning, the town gathered, not in outrage. In shame. Jed stood by the well, arms folded. You gotta call him a sinner now? He asked the preacher's nephew. Or just a better man than you'll ever be? The boy's voice cracked. No one answered. Naomi stood in front of the bakery, dusty, bandaged, shoulders high. Her voice was low but clear. This man is the only decent one I've ever met out here, she said. We stayed for shelter. We remained for love. No one argued. Even the churchmen looked away. Weeks passed. The ranch healed. A new barn rose. Built not by Wade alone, but with quiet help, hammer by hammer, from those who had once stayed silent. Eleanor started her egg stall at the market. People came, not out of pity, but curiosity. Her herbs cured headaches and bad tempers. She smiled now. Sometimes. Naomi trained horses again, took in wild ones, broke them gently. Not with fear, but with patience. She rode like a storm in control. Maybelle taught the children to read under the shade tree, books spread wide on the grass. Even the preacher's daughter came, quiet and barefoot. The house was louder now. Dishes clanked. Doors creaked open without knocking. Laughter spilled down the hallway like wind through new leaves. Wade walked every morning past the oak tree where Emily lay, but he didn't stop like before. He nodded once, then kept walking, past the barn, past the coop, past the sound of cow calling Mr. Quiet from atop Birch's saddle. And when he reached the fence line, he looked back, not for ghosts, but for everything that had stayed. The sun caught his eyes. He smiled. Some men die in silence, but others, if lucky, are interrupted by the sound of a second chance.